Dustin Pedroia is a newcomer this year on the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame ballot. But will late career injuries hold him back from getting a spot?
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby, aka Maljanian. Now, yes, that's an Armenian name, Maljanian, for those of you who are wondering how to pronounce it. And I am here with you to talk all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part is it is all completely free, so you might as well tune in because Locked On is your team every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Tuesday. We are getting closer and closer to winter, but the weather outside hasn't indicated much. It was absolutely gorgeous outside yesterday. I spent a lot of time sitting outside getting some fresh air, and the weather wants to seem to hang on to fall, which I am 100% okay with because I do not like the cold and being cooped up inside, but I do love the holidays. We are getting closer to those too. So hope you're getting excited and you're thinking about all of that Christmas shopping that you have to do over the next month. But it was a fun day in Major League Baseball yesterday because the Hall of Fame ballot was released. All of the names that are on the ballot this year came out, and there were 14 newcomers that were listed on the ballot, including Dustin Pedroia, face of the Boston Red Sox franchise for years, four-time All-Star and four-time Gold Glove winner, helping the Red Sox to World Series titles in 2007 and 2013. He batted .299 with 140 homers, 725 and 138 steals for the Red Sox from 2006 to 19, winning the 2007 American League Rookie of the Year and 2008 American League MVP awards. So it's really hard to find literally anything at all to dislike about Dustin Pedroia. I mean, how do you dislike a career .299 hitter with 140 home runs, 922 runs scored, 138 stolen bases, and 725 RBIs? I mean, it's impossible to think about that. Four-time Gold Glover, Defensive Player of the Year, Silver Slugger, MVP, Rookie of the Year. I mean, you can go into so much about the accolades and what he did for the Boston Red Sox to make a difference for the franchise, not just on the field, but also off the field. He just served as a great leader for the Red Sox to have in that clubhouse, a guy who served as a really strong veteran to help mentor some of the younger players as he got later on in his career. And he just played the game with so much integrity. And for years, when you thought about the Boston Red Sox, you thought about Dustin Pedroia. Petey, our guy, he just was so much of an important figure in the game, but he did face injuries late in his career that I worry will end up holding him back from making it into the Hall of Fame because he had numbers that were really competitive, but he didn't have enough to put him over the top and definitively have him stand out. And who knows what would have happened if he hadn't gotten injured and absolutely plagued the last few years of his career, because you have to wonder if he still played, if he would have been a guy who was able to get himself a little bit higher in terms of some statistical categories to get himself into the Hall of Fame. But it's unfortunate that we won't ever know if that is going to be the case because he didn't get that chance. And now sitting here, we have no choice but to only go off of the numbers that he did put up. And those numbers alone don't scream Hall of Fame numbers, but the way that he represented the game and what he meant to the sport might give him a little bit more of a shot. But I do feel like ultimately he's not going to get in because of those injuries that plagued him later on in his career and held him back from getting the numbers that compete with some other players who are on the ballot. But I do love Dustin Pedroia, and it's cool to see his name there. He was one of 14 newcomers on the ballot this year. Outfielder Ichiro Suzuki and pitcher CC Sabathia are also newcomers that are on the ballot. Felix Hernandez, Carlos Gonzalez, and Hanley Ramirez are also among the newcomers, joined by reliever Fernando Rodney, second baseman Ian Kinsler, second baseman / outfielder Ben Sobrist, shortstop Troy Tulowitzki, catchers Russell Martin and Brian McCann, and outfielders Curtis Granderson and Adam Jones. Other people who are on the ballot that are repeat names include Alex Rodriguez, Manny Ramirez, Andrew Jones, Carlos Beltran, Chase Utley, Omar Vizquel, Jimmy Rollins, Bobby Abreu, Andy Pettit, Mark Bullry, Francisco Rodriguez, Torrey Hunter, and David Wright. So lots of prestigious names on this list. Manny Ramirez, another really powerful figure in Boston Red Sox baseball. Career .312 batting average with 2,574 hits and 555 home runs. He scored 1,544 runs over the course of his career with 1,831 RBIs and 38 stolen bases. He has a career on base percentage of .411, slugging percentage of .585, and OPS of .996. Manny was a 12-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion, World Series MVP. He won the batting title and a 9-time Silver Slugger winner. So talk about accolades and one of the best in the game at the time that he did play, but he did use steroids, so that's something that likely will hold him back from getting into the Hall as it has for him in the past. And Alex Rodriguez, another name who's on there that likely also won't get in because of the fact that he also was a steroid user. And if they're going to enforce that, it should be consistent across the board. But there are some other interesting names on here. Andy Pettit, he has a good chance to get in. Andrew Jones, possibly. I mean, Carlos Beltran should get in. They might hold the Astros year against him, but they shouldn't. Overall, with his numbers, he deserves to get in. I mean, there are some great names on this ballot. And despite the fact that I don't see Pedroia or Manny getting in for different reasons, I think it's cool that their names are on there because it really does solidify the fact that both of them were just legendary Red Sox players that did a great job of representing the franchise. Hanley Ramirez, another name who's on there, played for the Red Sox. He was traded by the Red Sox to the Marlins after the 2005 season and was the 2006 NL Rookie of the Year and later won the NL batting title in 2009. And then Ian Kinsler also made an appearance with the Boston Red Sox as part of that 2018 World Series team. So lots of names here of players that potentially could get into the Hall of Fame. And it'll be interesting to see how all of this plays out and which guys get in and which guys don't. And every year when they do this, there are always some disagreements about players who were left out that should be in and players that were put in that people don't think should have been in. But it's all part of the fun of the Hall of Fame ballot and seeing who gets in and who doesn't. And obviously, I hope that these Red Sox players get in, especially Pedroia and Manny, who were just two fantastic, legendary players that people looked up to as fans, as the guys that were the faces of the franchise. But even if they don't get in, we'll still always remember them as legendary Red Sox figures, guys who will not be forgotten as players who made a huge impact on the Boston Red Sox organization. So we will see how this all plays out, but lots of talented names on here. And it's always cool to me to see all the names and think back to a lot of moments in history of guys who really made an impact in their sport. Like, I mean, CC Sabathia is an absolute legend that definitely should get in. Ichiro Suzuki, another name who has accomplished a ton over the course of his Major League Baseball career. So it's always interesting to me to look back and see the names on the ballot and remember good times in Major League Baseball. So we'll see what happens with that and how it plays out. But coming up, it's a big decision day today for a Red Sox pitcher. What is his fate going to look like in Boston? That's coming up next. If you're looking to go to some sporting events that might be more expensive, or a concert or a comedy show, any sort of live event that you like, even if you're going to see a play or a musical, tickets can get super expensive, but Gametime is here to save the day, because the unique thing about Gametime is that for literally everything I've ever attended, the tickets on Gametime have been cheaper than other ticketing services. When I go in and I compare different sources that sell tickets, I always find that the cheaper prices are on Gametime. And you can see the view from your seat before you purchase the tickets so that you can be ensured that you don't have an obstructed view, which I absolutely love. And Gametime Picks filters out the fluff for you to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, and it makes the process a lot less overwhelming and a lot easier. So if you want this to be you, if you like attending live events, just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Gametime is a great way to make sure that you're reaching all of your ticketing needs and saving money in the process. So you might as well check that out whenever you are going to a live event next. We were talking about the Hall of Fame ballot that was released with several key names of former Red Sox players making an appearance on there, like Dustin Pedroia, Manny Ramirez, Hanley Ramirez, and Ian Kinsler, guys who made an impact in Boston, some more than others. Dustin Pedroia is a guy who Boston loves and adores, and even other baseball fans across the league that aren't Red Sox fans absolutely adore Petey. So we will see if he gets in. I'm thinking likely not. But when thinking about all of these legends that played in Boston, we also have to think about the current Boston Red Sox team that is trying to get back into a spot where they can be in contention for the playoffs, because that was their goal going into this offseason, that they made it clear as a front office that they are going to do everything that they can to get the Red Sox back to being a contending team. And a lot of that involves trying to finalize their roster, retain certain guys, let certain guys go. And Nick Pivetta is a guy who the Red Sox extended the qualifying offer to for the 2025 season. And today is the deadline for him to make a decision on that qualifying offer. If he accepts the offer, he will pitch for the Red Sox in 2025 on a one-year deal worth a little over $21 million. But if he declines, he'll stay in MLB free agency and can negotiate with all 30 teams at that point, including the Red Sox. So declining it would give him more flexibility, but it's also taking the risk that he doesn't get a team to sign him for next year. So there's definitely pros and cons, because accepting it could be restricting how much money he makes next year and beyond, and even his ability to get a longer term deal. If the Red Sox only intend on keeping him for another year, he could be missing out on signing a longer term contract elsewhere. So there are pros and cons to both situations, but I'm sure he's really thinking a lot about it. The Red Sox presenting the qualifying offer to Pivetta in the first place caught a lot of people by surprise, myself included, because $21.05 million is a hefty salary for a starter who's never really logged more than 10 wins or posted an ERA under 4 in a season. So he's been a very average pitcher. But it proved to be a move by Breslow and company to get on top of things because they anticipated his reportedly strong market, which is heating up. There have been lots of reports that a lot of teams are interested in Pivetta, so they wanted to get a jump on it to give him at least the opportunity to say he wants to stay here rather than going elsewhere. The Red Sox will receive a second-round compensatory draft pick if he declines the qualifying offer and joins another team. ESPN's Jeff Passan seemed to think that he almost certainly won't accept the qualifying offer and is in line to sign a free agent contract of at least 3 years in length. But the New York Post, John Heyman, meanwhile, said that there's a chance that Pivetta accepts the offer, but that he was also considering options outside of Boston, where he's called home since August 2020. Should Pivetta end up walking, it could make the Red Sox more aggressive in their effort to strengthen their rotation because that's just one less arm that can come in and start games. And the Red Sox, we know, are trying to get at least one frontline starter, but this could cause them to want to get 2 frontline starters if Pivetta declines, which I honestly hope he does, because I think for his own sake, he deserves to at least test out free agency and see if there's a team out there that would offer him a longer term deal. Plus, on top of that, I don't think the Red Sox really need him in their rotation, and it would also encourage them to be even more aggressive because they already have Brian Bayo, Cutter Crawford, who may get traded this offseason. Who knows? Then they have Lucas Giolito, who didn't pitch at all last year, but they know is going to be a starter. And they have Tanner Houck, who was the most consistent starter this past season and was the guy they could rely on the most in that rotation to go out there and pitch and get the job done. So if they brought Nick Pivetta back, it would really feel like just a repeat of this past year's rotation with adding Giolito in and hoping that he would pan out to be something that the Red Sox want him to be. Now, if you go into the season with that rotation, that's not exactly reassuring because Cutter Crawford had his struggles in 2024. Pivetta had his struggles, especially with the home run ball. Then you have Brian Bayo, who was not very good in the first half of the season, but was good in the second half. And you wonder what version of them we're going to get in 2025. Are we going to get the version of him that was like the first half Bayo or the version of him that was like the second half Bayo? So it makes you think, okay, like that's a lot of question marks. The only one who's the furthest really thing from a question mark that they have is Tanner Houck right now. And I feel pretty confident in Houck's ability to go out there and still be the guy that the Red Sox want him to be and be a number 1, possibly number 2 starter for this team if they go out and get somebody else. But by bringing back Pivetta, I would be worried that the Red Sox would use that as justification to say, okay, we don't need to go out and get another starter because now we have our 5 guys. And this is just not the rotation that I want to go into the 2025 season with. I want a security blanket of knowing we have a bona fide ace in the rotation. And you can't say that any of the starters right now that they have are a bona fide ace. So that's exactly what I would be concerned about. And by Pivetta declining, then you already open up a spot in the rotation, which means the Red Sox are forced to go out and get somebody to add to that pitching staff. And that's a great opportunity to utilize that space to get a true number 1 frontline starter, which I think they are looking at anyway in anticipation that Pivetta doesn't accept it. But I just hope that even if he does decide to accept it, that they see it more as he's a depth caliber starter, somebody who they can throw into the rotation if there's an injury, but that they could maybe have pitched primarily out of the bullpen if he does come back for this upcoming season. But the Red Sox need to make aggressive moves to add to this pitching staff, and they need to do that with or without Pivetta. But I just worry that with their past recent history over the last few years, that if Pivetta comes back, they'll say, okay, now the rotation is shaped out because we have Giolito coming back. And that could just be a recipe for disaster because what confidence do you really have in Cutter Crawford right now? What has he shown ability-wise to be a frontline starter for this team? Somebody who can provide quality innings and not get himself trapped in giving up home runs early in games and making it really difficult for the Red Sox to come back in that game. Do you have faith 100% that Brian Bayo is going to be the version of him that we saw in the second half that came out there and got the job done and looked a lot more confident and a lot more dominant. Do you feel confident that Tanner Houck is going to continue to elevate upward? I mean, I'm sure he will. I think him pitching more innings in 2024 than he was used to. Yes, he got tired from doing that towards the end of the season, but it really broke him in to allow him to have that path now to succeed in a greater capacity, because he can hopefully string together more innings in a start than we've seen from him in past seasons, which could prove very valuable for the Red Sox. So I'm looking at the situation and saying, yes, I think Pivetta is a guy who the Red Sox, if they bring him back, could be in the rotation. But if he is, I'm not really seeing an improved rotation from 2024. And I wouldn't really go into the season being as confident as I would be if they signed or traded for one or two starters this offseason. So Pivetta's decision, I feel like, affects a little bit more than you might think. I know the Red Sox are talking to free agent starters, trying to get some reliable arms in here, which I think is fantastic, but I don't want them to change their mind, and I don't want Pivetta coming back on the qualifying offer to put this idea in their heads that they don't have to make moves to improve this team moving forward. So hopefully when it comes to the Red Sox pitching staff, whatever decision Pivetta makes, the Red Sox as an organization still have a plan to add to that rotation a frontline starter. And I think for Pivetta's sake too, this is the time to part ways with the Red Sox and try to get a longer term deal somewhere else, because I just don't see him being a valuable piece of a Red Sox pitching staff that struggled so much as a whole in 2024. I think it's time for change, and I think that means with more than one starter. So hopefully Pivetta declines the qualifying offer and decides to be a free agent, because I think all around that would benefit both him and the Red Sox more, and it would give the Red Sox a chance to really go out there and be aggressive and get starters that they need to fix this rotation and make it a competitive one for them in 2025, because that's what's most important here is the pitching. That's the biggest thing the Red Sox need to fix if they want to contend next season. So hopefully that ends up being the case. We'll see what happens there with Pivetta, but the Red Sox are linked to another player, this time an infielder, and coming up I'm going to be talking about why he might make sense for the Boston Red Sox. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I am telling you, FanDuel can help you win tons of money, and they have so many different types of sports on there that you can bet on. I have a friend who is obsessed with sports betting, and he somehow always finds the most creative things to bet on. So if you have a creative mind and that sounds like you, look no further than FanDuel, because they absolutely have you covered. Do the Boston Red Sox have us covered for the 2025 season? Not yet, but this offseason could change a lot of narratives in terms of what people think about the Boston Red Sox as a team and where they stand heading into 2025. Because if you look at the division that they are in, you have the Yankees who went to the World Series in 2024. You have the Orioles who made the playoffs and are a solid baseball team that just is still adding pieces to get better and will only continue to get better to make themselves a even bigger threat moving forward. Then you have the Blue Jays, who struggled during the 2024 season and are probably going to have to do some big roster revamping if they want to get back on track to being a winning team. Then you have the Tampa Bay Rays, who had a bit of an off year in 2024, but they somehow still always find a way to be relevant and be a competitive team within their own division. How We all keep asking that question every day of our lives. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the point being that the Red Sox division is not easy. And if they want to contend truly in this division, that means making smart strategic moves that are going to help put this team over the top, because I don't want this to be a situation where the Red Sox try to justify this offseason by saying, yeah, we're confident that guys we have in the clubhouse are going to elevate their games and get better. Because let me tell you, yes, that's great that you feel like you have a lot of young talent that can help improve your roster as a whole, because they're going to continue to get better. And that's fine. And that's exciting. But you can't rely solely on that, because not every young player is going to pan out the way you want them to. Not every young player on the team is going to be able to contribute in the same way. So you have to also mix that with veteran experience and guys who you know can produce in the league, and you know what you're getting from them. And the Red Sox certainly do seem to be exploring options when it comes to veterans. And one name that was floated around recently that the Red Sox have expressed interest in is infielder Willy Adames. There are a few other teams that are linked to being interested in Adames, so I would take this report very lightly for right now. But say the Red Sox were to sign Adames, this would open up several defensive possibilities for him. Trevor Story right now is the shortstop and is just an excellent defender there. Even if injuries have limited his offense and playing time altogether over his 3 seasons with the Red Sox, nobody can deny how good his defense is. Story still owed $77.5 million through the 2027 season. And while he can opt out of his contract after 2025, he probably won't, given his last few years and not getting a chance to play a lot. So he'll probably opt in and stay in Boston after 2025. So keeping that all in mind, he likely would be the shortstop still. But an option could be, because the Red Sox used Trevor Story at second base in 2022 when Xander Bogaerts was still on the team, they could shift Story over to second base to accommodate Willy Adames and have him play shortstop. Or they can stick Adames in as the regular second baseman to try to resolve the revolving door issue that the Red Sox have had at that position in recent years, because Adames has said that he would be willing to move off of shortstop for the benefit of whatever team he goes to, which is making him an even more desirable free agent option. Then you have Marcelo Meyer and Christian Campbell in the system, and Vaughn Grissom, who is likely going to make appearances at second base in 2025 if he can stay healthy. But Meyer and Campbell could also slot into the infield mix as early as this upcoming season if Campbell isn't utilized as an outfielder, which he could, because he does play in the outfield too. So once the Red Sox see what they have in the youngsters and need to find playing time, they could then even use Adames at third base and bump Rafael Devers either into a first base or DH type of role. So there are plenty of moving parts defensively, but Adames would provide a clear boost to a lineup that is in dire need of a big right-handed bat. So that's a lot of benefits for the Red Sox signing him, because he's a righty in a very lefty-heavy lineup that struggles significantly against left-handed pitching. And he can also play multiple infield positions, so he can kind of be placed where the Red Sox feel makes sense based on need at the time. And they might not know really what's best and where to put him right away, because they would want to see what they have in guys like Christian Campbell and Marcelo Meyer and even Vaughn Grissom. So they might move some things around, but having Adames' presence, a veteran presence there who can hit, and we know that he's somebody who is going to provide a lot of value, it wouldn't be too crazy of a plan to sign him, because then the Red Sox know they have options at all of these positions. And especially if they do face injuries and they need to bring in somebody else to fill in for someone who gets injured in the infield, wouldn't it be great if they have Adames on the bench where they can say, oh, great, yeah, you can come in and play shortstop because Trevor Story is going to be out for a couple months, or you can play second base because Vaughn Grissom had to go back down to AAA because he's struggling. Having a guy like that could be worth it. And if he ends up being on the team, it gives them the option to make him an everyday player at presumably shortstop or second base. So that way then the pressure gets taken off of Grissom a little bit, and even Christian Campbell for when he eventually gets called up. And it can allow them to take their time a little bit more with their development and not feel as much like people are counting on them to come up and be those guys that we are excited to see, because I do feel like the Red Sox have a lot of young talent in the system right now, but they want to make sure they're handling those guys the right way and they're not rushing them into getting called up to the major league team, because in that situation, then what happens is sometimes if a player gets rushed up to the majors, then they don't end up performing to the level that they are expected to, because they feel like there's too much pressure on them. They feel like they didn't get enough time in the minors to really work through things before getting called up to the majors, and it could end up ruining a prospect's career. So the last thing the Red Sox want is for that to happen. So Adames could also be another key piece for if there for some reason is a delay or a setback that prevents those guys from being called up when they're supposed to or when they're needed to be called up by the Boston Red Sox. So having somebody in the mix here who's a constant, steady presence could be huge and could be a game changer for Boston. So we're not sure how serious these reports are, if the Red Sox are aggressively pursuing him or not, but it could be a good infield option, especially because he's a guy with a ton of experience that knows what it's like to move around and is open to playing other positions besides shortstop. But either way, whether the Red Sox sign him or not, they need to make some moves this offseason, and big ones if they want to win over the fans again, because people have lost a lot of trust in this Red Sox front office, and it's going to be on them to amend that trust as we head into next year. Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Red Sox and making it your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Paul Sullivan, aka Sully, brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I really do appreciate it. Sully has a great show and will keep you up to date on all the moves across the league and other teams that are in the Red Sox division or whatever other teams you want to hear about. Sully has you covered. You can find his show wherever you get your podcasts right after this. As always, keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I will catch you on the flip side.